Good morning, afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, November 2nd, and my name is Jordan Smith. I am the voice and the astrologer behind the website, nonconformistconscience.com. I also have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. I say this every week. So let's talk about this week, and let's also talk about what we're kind of all in, these eclipses that are going on right now. So let's start with that, okay? Last week we had a partial solar eclipse in the sign of Scorpio. I was on a show where we went over this. It's on the EA Zoom channel if you guys want to check it out. It's the show called The EA View. And it's me and a few other wonderful women where we just, talk all things astrology about once a month. But we did a transit of the month and we went over the Scorpio partial eclipse. But not all of you guys watch that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and the Taurus eclipse that's coming up next week before I jump into this week's astrology, because we're in this transitionary gate in between the eclipses, and I want to bring people up to speed a little bit because last week I just posted that video where I had recorded the show, and the week before that I wasn't able to put out a video. I got hit by a car taking my oldest kiddo to school, so things have been a little bit crazy. It's eclipse season, so here we go. Whenever we have eclipses, we have two cycles a year. One is in the springtime and one is in the fall, and so these represent a 6-month period of growth and emotional dynamics that happen for us to be able to evolve, through our emotional body. And for evolution to proceed, we have to have these kind of events come up that bring up emotional dynamics to the surface, or bring people into our lives, or we end things. And with eclipses, it is usually karmic endings and beginnings. They're very amped up new moons and full moons, because that is when the eclipses happen. That's Dexter back there. Anyway, Kanye might come in a second. Oh, yeah, here he comes. But so when we have an eclipse, whenever it's a new moon and the new moon is happening on the nodal axis or near the nodal axis, we will have an eclipse. If it is directly or within 1 to 2 degrees that new moon's on the node, then it's going to be a total solar eclipse on a new moon. If it is, 10 degrees away, like it was last week, then we have a partial solar eclipse. Next week, we are having a total lunar eclipse because the eclipse is happening on the full moon, meaning that the full moon is going to be conjunct the north node of Taurus. So we're in this evolutionary, karmic gateway right now. And so I want to break this down just a little bit further. That was more kind of a technical thing. So if you're like a student of astrology, it's really cool whenever you pull up a chart for this, you can see that a full moon or a new moon is happening, pretty close to a node. And then, hey, this is an eclipse. So like I said, we get them in the fall and in the springtime. So the Taurus Scorpio nodal axis. Let's talk about what this is archetypally, and we will bring in some of the astrology of this week afterwards. I'm going to be a little generalized here just for time's sake, but with the Scorpio side, Scorpio's about where we have reached a limitation. It's where we feel power, and that power is from what we've known and already experienced. On the flip side, we can feel powerless because we haven't experienced the thing that is creating the feeling or sensation of powerlessness. And so whenever we are resisting growth because we're feeling overpowered, right? That means a lot of times when we continue to resist instead of kind of diving off of the diving board into the deep end, that limit can be reached. And so growth cannot continue, evolution cannot proceed. And so within the Scorpio archetype, we get to learn that there are forces outside of ourselves that are more powerful and that we can't control them. And when we resist and a limitation is reached, then we can be forced to propel forward if we're not consciously working. And so that is why there can be these endings and beginnings. That's why Scorpio really represents the death and rebirth cycle. It's about composting one thing, it's metamorphic, it's alchemical, it's, taking, the lead and turning it into gold, or coal into a diamond, right? It's very alchemical. And so it's really taking experiences that we've had where we've reached a limit, and now we're transmuting them into a different way. So that way we can now propel forward in evolution. So we will deal with things like manipulations, hidden motivations, the psychological side of things. There can be these guys are cracking me up, guys. There can be this, there can be this deep need to really go within whenever we're dealing with Scorpio. Scorpio wants us to penetrate and get to the bottom of some core dynamic that's going on where we have reached a limit. And so it can be really, 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 overwhelming and scary. We deal with the taboo here, and it's the intensity of things. So a lot of us are reaching some type of limitation, and it is karmic in nature, meaning that it is something that we've chosen on a soul level to work through. And if we're afraid and we're resisting, well, we are going to get to experience that there are things that are out of our control, that for evolution to proceed at some point, things are going to happen and we're going to continue on, whether we like it or not. And so it's really teaching us how to learn to work with and to listen to ourselves, which is the polarity of Scorpio. So we're getting into the Taurus side. So the Taurus side is, whereas Scorpio's water, Taurus is earth. So the Taurus side is really looking at our relationship with self, our inner relational essential needs, right? It's the function of being able to listen to ourselves, listening to our higher selves, listening to our soul, Scorpio. And it is understanding that we have intrinsic things that we come into this life with. They are our own personal natural resources that afford us the ability to be able to survive. Taurus is about survival. And so if we are feeling the Scorpio side of things, right, where we're feeling overpowered, or that we've reached a limit, or we're experiencing manipulations or someone else's hidden motivations, or we're figuring out what our own hidden motivations are and how that's led us to manipulate others, which is something I'm seeing a lot right now with clients and hearing about it. Well, that will trigger this, survival instinct, which is very human nature. And so with the eclipse coming up next week, we are going to be dealing with these essential relational needs and learning what our intrinsic natural resources are that afford us the ability to be able to survive. For some people, it's going to be money and the mundane, right? I need a job because I need money and I've reached a limit and I need to survive. For others, which is a lot of what I'm seeing, is we've all been working with the astrology that's been going on, and this year has been so powerful with dealing with the emotional side of relationships, especially relationship with self. And it is because we in America especially are in a Pluto return. So on a collective level, the collective is really wanting to change and evolve and grow. But the only way for that to happen is for people to start on a personal level. So a lot of us are being forced or called to do this deep inner shadow work, which is the Scorpio side of things. So when we are dealing with this, eclipse season that we're in, a lot of us are having our survival instincts be triggered. And we are looking at our relationship attachment styles. This doesn't necessarily have so much to do with the archetype of Scorpio Taurus necessarily, but Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn and its polarity point is Cancer. And that's like our foundation, that is our attachment, right? And the Capricorn side is where we are able to be responsible and to have an inner authority about us. And so a lot of people's attachment styles that are coming from childhood are now coming up to the surface to work on. And that is what I'm seeing with a lot of people right now. They're understanding the motivations behind their actions by having to really look at their inner psychological content, especially when the survival instinct is being triggered. So we're looking at things like fight, flight, freeze, fawn dynamics that have to deal with our, attachment styles. And this is to ultimately, when we understand what our survival instincts are that come to the surface when we're experiencing or feeling like we're being overpowered with the Scorpio kind of dynamic, well, then we get to really understand why it is why we are the way that we are and where that comes from. And that ultimately helps us look at the choices that we have made that have led up to this moment in time. And then it pulls in this very Capricorn dynamic of being able to take responsibility for oneself. So taking responsibility for oneself when you're pulling in these nodes is understanding what my essential relationship needs are and not projecting those onto others and taking responsibility and meeting them for myself instead of feeling powerless to do so. It is very much looking at the way in which we've been conditioned. We still have this Saturn square Uranus going on. So it's giving us so much objectivity for this whole eclipse cycle going on, for us to really zoom in and see and get to the bottom of these core dynamics of our relational needs, especially dealing with ourselves. And so this is the kind of content that's coming up during this whole eclipse window. And I wanted to talk about this, and I could just go on forever about it because I love Scorpio, and I love Taurus. I am very Venusian. My chart is very Venusian and it has a lot of Scorpio energy. And so, it makes sense to me why I love talking about this so much. But I want all of us to really, this week, while we're in we're sandwiched between the eclipses to really ask oneself, where do I feel powerless? Where have I given my power away? Where do I feel like I am able to meet my needs? Where have I projected my needs onto someone else? What are my essential needs? How am I able to survive? What new ways or healthy ways can I um, survive instead of using conditioned trauma responses? That is so much of the work that people are doing right now, is looking at this kind of hidden part of themselves, where we've been had some cognitive dissonance about it, or where we've experienced other people and where we've reached a limitation. A lot of us are ending relationships with people, and a lot of us are having new ones begin. And that doesn't just mean, romantically, it's friendships and family. When we look at Scorpio and then Pluto being in Capricorn, this is ancestral. This is so much ancestral karma that is happening and rising to the surface for us to work on them, and where our survival instinct is kicking in, and where we need to not project the past onto the present, and how to hold space for oneself. So let's talk a little bit about this week, leading up to this Taurus total lunar eclipse next week, happening on the 8th, which is midterm elections here in the United States. I'm going to talk politics for just one moment. Please, please, please. Taurus is about what our values are and what gives us meaning. Please vote for people who have the values that you really connect with, and vote for these people, because we are in a Pluto return in America. This is make or break time, baby. We've got to come out. We've got to do our societal duty, and we've got to vote, because I'm going to be personal. 157 congressmen, just voted to get rid of interracial marriage and same-sex marriage. This is something that could directly impact me as someone who has a interracial partner and family. My children are biracial. My husband is a Black man. I don't want to know what the world looks like if I, am not able to be with someone because of the color of their skin. So it's really important for us to get out and vote for people who have the values that we have, to be the change that we wish to see. If the collective is wanting to change, we need to vote for congressmen and people who are going to reflect this and help evolve the collective, not stay or resist and stay in the past or how it's always been. That's not going to work. It's not working on a personal level with any of us. So it's not going to work on a collective level. And that's my spiel, okay? So, and vote for whoever you want, but it's just really important, and to be safe. One other thing I want to mention before I talk a little bit about the astrology of this week is there is still a square going on between Mars, which is retrograde in the sign of Gemini, and it is squaring Neptune. We need to be looking at the immune system, Neptune, and really paying attention to where we go and just taking the precautions that we need to take, because there's going to be other waves of things that are going, it doesn't just necessarily mean COVID. It's going to be things that are dealing with our respiratory systems. And this winter, we can see an uptick in some of that, and we can see an uptick in areas where it didn't really affect people, like children or people more my age, in their 30s. So I want all of us to do our due diligence. I don't want to freak anyone out. It's just, if we're also, I just talked about it. We're dealing with death and rebirth, survival with these, the nodal axis. And then we have this square going on. So let's just do our due diligence. We're all going to be okay, but we just need to do our due diligence. kind of, let me move so you guys don't have to watch my dog clean himself. But so this week we have Venus on the South Node. So Venus is about our relational needs. It is in the sign of Scorpio. She's moved into Scorpio. This is intense. Venus and Scorpio is intense. Venus and Scorpio on the South Node can be intense. It is a karmic, it's dealing with definitely karmic relational stuff. And the purpose of Venus in Scorpio is really it's intense because it wants to get to the bottom of things. It wants to deeply understand why I am the way I am. Why did I do this? Why did this happen? Why am I feeling this way? Why did I choose to do that? It is, if you are consciously working with this, or you are someone who has a lot of Scorpio, or you have this something at 13 degrees Scorpio, you are going to be really wanting to get to the bottom of your inner workings, right? You're going to be wanting to understand yourself on a more deeper level. You're going to be wanting to talk about things on a deeper level. And it is going to be important to express these things because not only is Venus in Scorpio right now, Mercury has moved into Scorpio. So we've got the Sun and Venus and Mercury all in Scorpio. So these are the hidden depths of our soul that we're talking about here. This is happening on this South Node. So, and it's happening where the eclipse was last week. So there are so many relational dynamics. There are things that are going to come up for some of us where we're going to understand on a deeper level why we made the choices that we've made prior, it's going to get us in touch with what our motivations were. Because I know we like to think that we always know why we do the things that we do, but we're dealing with Scorpio here. Sometimes there's an inner power that we don't even know that we have, and it propels us into actions, and it can have a domino effect that eventually leads us to this place where we want to understand on a deeper level why we made a certain choice, or what was the motivation behind that I wasn't really in touch with, or whatever. So there are things that are going to come to the surface. There are things that we're going to be reviewing and revisiting from the past, where we're going to be able to connect dots with why we did what we did, or why we chose this. On the 5th, Venus is going to oppose Uranus. Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. It is close to that North Node. When we have an opposition, a lot of times it can symbolize where we've reached a limitation and where we're out of balance, right? And so to me, this really speaks to really observing the ways in which we react when we're triggered to something, especially it can be trauma, or it's really looking at the fight, flight, freeze or fawn dynamics and the attachment styles that we have, right? It is, Uranus can be trauma, and Taurus is about our values. So it's looking at the conditioned values that we have had and what the new values are, and really getting to the bottom of where we've been conditioned and what really is no longer something that resonates on a soul level as an essential need. It's really cutting to the quick and getting to the core of these inner dynamics as a way to free ourselves from them. You no longer have to do what you've done before. There's a really great expression in AA. I say it all the time to my friends, and it's very much, when we're dealing with evolution, we cannot evolve through the psychological only. We evolve through the emotional body. And so this is a time where you've got to feel to heal, okay? It is an old AA saying. Shout out to Bill W. He's got an interesting chart, but there's a lot there. And just know that some of us can be wanting to resist right now because of the emotions coming up, but really taking the time to ground oneself actually in our emotions so we can feel it and ultimately heal it so we can evolve past, right? And do things in a different way. I quoted Maya Angelou in my written report where I go into more of the moon stuff that goes on this week, but it's that when we know better, we do better. And this is this time frame, we're in this kind of portal of learning these things so that way when we know better, we can do better. I like to also say, you know, the toothpaste is out of the tube. You can't push it back in. It's out there. You've got to keep going forward. So the sun and Mercury and Venus are all going to, this is on what day? The 7th. They're all going to be meeting up together in the sky on that south node, and they're going to be squaring Saturn. So it's going to be this, some of us are going to have a massive amount of inner psychological tension because we know that something needs to be done. There's some type of work that we need to do in order to evolve or move past from the past, right? And Saturn squaring all of this in the sign of Aquarius really speaks to the dissolution of structures where past structures have hit these limitations and the need to rebel from these crystallized structures within. The beauty in all of this Scorpio energy with the sun, Mercury, and Venus all there is that it is going to help us get to the bottom of all of this so that we can move past. There's going to be an action that needs to be taken. And that can be really scary, especially when we're dealing with this kind of Aquarian, Uranian energy that we have going on, because it is standing on the precipice. Knowing all that comes from the past, what we've done, and knowing we have to move forward, but not understanding how that's going to look. And so just having faith, and it can be really scary. This is the time where you get to try the high dive, man, and it's going to work out. It's just you've got to listen to that inner voice as to what to do and to really penetrate and analyze why you've done the things you've done in the past and what those motivations are and where they stemmed from and how the conditionality from family, religion, and upbringing has really triggered these survival responses. This is the time we're getting to the bottom of this. This is this eclipse season. So I will talk more about next week's eclipse that is going to be happening on the 8th, midterms. Go out and vote, like I said. This is, I feel like, kind of a longer video, but I missed, you know, the week before, and last week I uploaded the EA view. So I just want all of you guys to treat yourself kindly. Remember to think about what you say before you say it. There's some of this energy going on, but definitely have those people that you know you can trust and express what's coming up to you and for you, because there can be a lot right now, especially if you have things at these, you know, the 13, 16, 15 degree marks of Scorpio, Taurus. This is, or even the fixed signs of Aquarius and Leo. This is going to be, you're going to be feeling this. There's no way that you can't be. There's going to be stuff that comes up. So do not resist. Your higher self is asking for you to look at this, to get to the bottom of it. And you've been consciously working with this energy already. So you can do this. Get after it. This is what life is all about, is, you know, from the manure sprouts a lotus. If you want to know more about this week, you can go to my website. I will put the link for it for you guys if you want to take a peek at that. I want you to have a beautiful week, and I will be here next week, and I'll be here for every moment of this. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.